Welcome back to News Talk. With cold weather fast approaching, this will soon be a rough time not to have a home. For teenagers who've been kicked out of the house, young people with neither life skills nor money, it's more than rough. In this segment, we will talk with a woman whose mission is to give LGBT youth who've been sent packing a place to turn. That place is called Casa Ruby, and Ruby Corrado joins us now. Welcome back.
Good morning.
It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for your time. How did the idea for Casa Ruby come about?
Well, I was the first one who experienced the lack of support. I was 16 years old when I left El Salvador, and I arrived in D.C. with very little support. And there was support for other immigrants. However, being a member of the LGBT community, there was nothing that really I could turn to. So one day I had a dream that I was running a shelter for LGBT, and that dream came true this year. So today, actually, the work that I do and others do at the organization is to support those that really have no other way to turn. You know, homophobia, transphobia, and lack of understanding of LGBT youth actually puts them at risk. Many of them, you know, have already a hard time at home being young, and being gay, lesbian, bisexual, trans actually amounts to more issues, and many of them end up homeless. Describe the services. What's the environment like as you seek to create a safe haven for young people? Yeah, I always felt that for many youth, even though they may have had a home, it was not really, they may have had a room to live or a house, but they never really grew up in a home. So the word casa actually means home. And my purpose is to make sure that those young individuals who may have not been loved when they were young because of the misunderstanding that parents had that something was wrong with their kids, and instead of loving them and embracing them and really nurturing them as human beings, they try to correct them because society tells us that something is wrong being gay. So therefore, you know, parents think that instead of loving a child who's gay or lesbian or transgender, they think something is wrong, they panic, and they try to fix it. They want them to conform. And they want to fix it. And unfortunately, you can't fix, you know, something that it's real. Now, sometimes parents are going to think that it will be easier for their son or daughter if these other issues aren't there. So do you understand from that perspective how it's not, I disapprove of you, I don't like you this way, I'd rather you be this other way. It's that I know the world can be unforgiving, and life will be easier if you're more what people expect. Correct, and I think that there's some truth to that, but I think for children, for young children, or as a parent, the job should be to support them and to help them grow up strong, to help them grow confident of who they are. But very often, because of the misunderstanding that something is really wrong, what happens is the opposite. So you have kids that are at a very young age may bring some sort of confidence themselves, but parents are always telling them, oh, you need to be a little bit more masculine if you're a feminine boy, and I think that creates some trauma. And these kids need love, not trauma at early ages. And are you literally dealing with young people who've been kicked out of the home? Very unfortunate that most of the youth that actually come seeking our services, that actually look me up on Facebook or sometimes get my number, it's because parents simply don't want them. And parents have told them that there's something wrong with them. And it feels many, many times, because I've been doing this for a long time, that parents eventually look at their kids as something that they can just dispose of. And for me, it's a treasure, because I understand what it is like to grow up young and vulnerable. And I try to do the opposite. I try to delete a lot of the bad and negative trauma that they have endured in their life. And basically, I celebrate them. You know, most of what I do is, in addition to providing them with housing, food, and the basic needs, is I very often give them love, because they also love me back.
How at risk are young people who don't have a Casa Ruby to turn to?
Very at risk. There's data suggesting that in many American cities, there's about 60% of homeless youth that are in the streets of these large cities are LGBT. And that is a large number. I know that there was a report 2 weeks ago that talked about transgender youth. 40% in Washington, D.C. have experienced homelessness at some point in their life. And these are individuals that are not even 20 years old. So it's a very big issue. I live it every day. I wish, because to me, I wish I had more to give them. But I know what I always promise them is that they do not have to struggle alone.
How do you find the resources to do what you are doing?
Well, lately we have been getting some support from our D.C. government, and Mayor Mariel Bowser has been very supportive. Before she went into her term, she understood the issue, and she has been already working with me and her administration to start supporting with government dollars. A lot of it is also volunteers who come into the organization. We have very close to 100 volunteers. And a lot of it also comes from donations. And that allows for us to do things like I can pay their cell phone so they can have access to go to school and keep communicating with me. It's like I'm like an LGBT mom. And it's the support, but a lot of volunteers as well.
What are you doing now, in particular, as we get closer and closer to winter season and cold weather?
As a response, because every year the issue keeps getting bigger to me. I think also Washington, D.C., it's been known to be a very welcoming city for LGBT individuals. So we have youth that are living in Alabama, that are living in Nebraska, and actually venturing to Washington, D.C., because they also want to have an opportunity. And I see a lot of them coming to Casa Ruby. And for this winter, we actually decided to address the issue with a new shelter, which is actually 16 beds that we are providing through the winter. So individuals who may not have anything or may be afraid to go to a traditional shelter, which is the case for those who are very vulnerable, that they can actually come in. And we actually will go into the community and try to find them so we can bring them in for during the time of hypothermia mostly.
What's your advice for parents who find themselves with a child and whose orientation,
yes,
they just don't feel like they have the skills? Not to say that you're going to kick them out, but in terms of this being so different than what you expected,
yes,
how do you get over that shock and then be there and adapt and provide parental love?
I think the most important thing for parents is to know that there's nothing wrong with your children, to also seek information, because very often parents act because they don't know. They think that they're having an issue and they are the only ones who are facing this issue. But the reality is that there is information on how to help you deal with a youth who may be different. I actually call my children special children because they're very special in many ways. And while society tells them that something is wrong with them, I actually celebrate because they are special. They're loving human beings that actually just need to be understood for who they are. And I think if parents actually looked at their children for just, how precious they are, nothing else will matter.
You mentioned at the outset some of the challenges you faced at a very early age. Are you able to share some of that experience with the young people you're dealing with now? Because many of them are the age that you related just a second ago.
Yes, one of my daughters, who is a transgender girl who's almost 20 years old, it was time for her to go back to school because unfortunately she grew up in the child welfare system that didn't understand that she was special. So very often she was singled out as someone to be a troublemaker, but in reality, all she wanted to be was herself. So when we actually met, she was referred through the legal system. And when we met, I just knew, and I looked at her and I said, this is a child that hasn't had the opportunity to be loved and celebrated for who they are. So she went to school, and I remember one day she calls me and she said, "Mom, I feel like an outcast. Everybody here is making me feel like I am the ugly duck in the room." And I said, "Baby, no, they're not. We simply have to understand that people may have never met someone like you." And eventually that is what happened. I worked with the counselors who were also amazing, and a social worker, that she has continued to go to school. And now a lot of her classmates are actually calling to make sure she's fine. And now she's worrying about her hair, and she's worrying about what she's going to wear the next day. And I think it's because people got to really meet her.
And people can find out more about the great work that you're doing online. You've got a great website that talks a lot about all the things you're doing and hope to do in the future.
Yes, and thank you so much, because I think awareness is important, and supporting today on Giving Tuesday, it's a great idea too.
Today is Giving Tuesday.
Yes.
So we've come through, what, Black Friday and Cyber Monday. It's time to think about others, and Giving Tuesday is a great way to do that. And correct me if I'm wrong, you're casaruby.org.
casaruby.org.
Thanks for the great work you're doing. It sounds like your plans are to do more and more as the resources permit.
And if you know anyone who's LGBT or anyone who's really maybe missing out on love, please send them our way.
Ruby Corrado of Casa Ruby. Great to see you again. Great to speak with you again. Thanks very much for your time.
Take care.
We're back with more News Talk right after this.